Leland Kootstra, accountant with Frazer LLP, joined us back on episode 93 to share the 3 critical questions he asked each generation as they work toward transitioning a multi-generational, multi-million-dollar family dairy farming business. And he's back today with a quick list of the 3 areas that he sees the most successful dairy farm business owners mastering as they set themselves and their dairies ahead on this UpLevel Dairy Podcast. This is the UpLevel Dairy Podcast for dairy farm owners, managers, and advisors who are committed to profitability, sustainability, and excellence. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to bring you the conversations that will uplevel your skill set and your mindset so you can be a top performer in the dairy farming business. This episode is brought to you by High Ground Dairy. High Ground Dairy provides global dairy market intelligence, insurance services, futures and options brokerage, and advisory programs to a diverse range of dairy market participants throughout the supply chain. Enjoy this conversation with Leland Kootstra.
Leland, I want you to speak to that Gen 2. So when we talk about Gen 2, again, we're talking about that generation of family, maybe even long-term employees that are part of the business for a long time that desire to be in ownership and to step into higher levels of responsibility and management. And so when you are working with Gen 2 and giving them, as you said before, that playbook for success, helping them to articulate what they need to do to be prepared for the responsibilities and the decisions that they will be making at some point, what are a few of the key factors, a few of the key things that you are guiding that generation to really excel in and develop their expertise in so they can be who they need to be that leader and that business owner and manager?
As I think about like my existing client base and I think about that top 10%, top 15% of operators and really what sets them apart, those characteristics have changed quite a bit over the years. I think so much of those top 10, top 15% of dairy operations, they are dialed in as far as the details. They know what it's costing them. They know what their schedules look like. They are dialed in because they have worked so hard to become efficient. They have worked really hard to make sure that every part of their operation is right-sized. It makes sense in the context of the rest of the business. There's not extra employees. There's not too many heifers. They haven't cut back so far on heifers that they're exposed to market volatility. And so I think detail-oriented is a huge characteristic of my really successful clients. On kind of lockstep with that, the adoption of a lot of risk management has been huge. And I think the best way I can kind of summarize it is these operators have spent so much time, so much effort, so much money making sure that they are as efficient as possible, that they are controlling as much of the volatility as they can. Why would they expose themselves to volatility outside of their control, right? And so we see that volatility in the feed market. We see the volatility in the milk market. And so, I mean, now more than ever, we have unbelievable risk management tools. You know, DMC, heavily adopted by a lot of farms. DRP is a wonderful tool that gives us a lot of real-time levers to pull, so that we can take advantage and at least limit the exposure that we have to what's going on. I don't think it makes sense to spend all your time and effort protecting yourself and then leaving the 2 largest line items on your dairy exposed to President in Russia invading Ukraine, right? Because I think that plays a huge role in the bottom line on our dairies, and we don't have a way to stop that, but we do have the tools to at least limit that exposure. So I think ability to adopt, understand, and utilize risk management is huge, and I think that's becoming more and more common, and we're getting better at it as an industry. I think we still spend too much time thinking about the cost of some of those tools versus what that cost actually buys us. And then lastly, as the dairy industry continues to consolidate, farms get bigger, we are living in an information age. We have access to information, and our farms are also exposed to, widespread social media and all those things. So I think being wise about how we operate our dairies, how we utilize, understand, and research environmental risks, I think is huge. Animal husbandry, environmental, those are huge to make sure that we're sustainable long term.
You've really shared some great insights about transition planning, about succession planning, about these conversations, why they're hard and how to get started in them. But then you've also been able to really capture these 3 common factors that you see in Generation 2 in the current and future business owners and managers of these dairies, and what it's going to take for them to be successful, to be able to achieve their version of success. And as you said, that might look a little bit different for each of them, what that success is, but that is independent of these fundamental skills that you've laid out. And as you talked about, it comes down to number 1, understanding the details, being extremely knowledgeable and into the details of the business, right? And we're not talking about micromanaging cows and micromanaging people. We're talking about managing the business and knowing those details, right?
Absolutely. It's being detailed to the point where you know the reason why you're doing what you're doing across the board. We've always done it this way, so that's why we do it. That's, in my opinion, that's one of the worst answers that we can have, is just accepting the way that it's always been. We have to have a reason for why we're doing what we're doing.
So being able to understand those details, and then as you also mentioned, just to recap those top 3 things that you see those that are setting them up for success as they transition into ownership and management, it's also having an in-depth understanding and action plan around risk management to protect the profitability of their business. And then the third thing you talked about was just being wise in your practices and being cognizant of what it takes to be a reputable business in the way that you care for animals, the way that you handle the people that work in your operation, and just being aware and astute in the perception that each step of that process plays out. And that all is really just as much a part of the succession planning and the decision making as the rest of it, right?
You just heard from Leland Kootstra, accountant with Frazer LLP. Find all of Leland's contact information and a bio in our show notes. This episode is brought to you by High Ground Dairy. High Ground Dairy provides global dairy market intelligence, insurance services, futures and options brokerage, and advisory programs to a diverse range of dairy market participants throughout the supply chain. Find all the links in our show notes to connect and learn more about High Ground Dairy. And once again, I'm Peggy Coffeen, and thank you for listening to the UpLevel Dairy Podcast.